To me, SEO is bending the internet to your will. Basically, you set about with a hypothesis of what you want to happen with your website or with your rankings or with a piece of content somewhere. And you say, I want people who search for this to arrive at my website here, or to go to this piece of content there, or that sort of thing. And if you're able to do that's SEO.
Hello and welcome to the Simple and Smart SEO Show,
where we provide tips and advice to improve your website's search engine ranking.
I'm Brittany Herzberg, SEO copywriter for holistic health and wellness pros who want to show up as the answer to a Googled question.
And I'm Crystal Waddell, an e-commerce seller and content creator. I help business owners communicate the value of their products and services through content so you can make more sales and grow your business.
We're business besties who love learning and sharing what we've learned. So what are we waiting for? Let's jump in.
Hey friends, welcome back to the Simple and Smart SEO Show podcast. I'm here with my friend B, my awesome co-host, and one of our newest friends, Crystal Carter from Wix.com.
Hello to B and hello to Crystal. Thank you so much for having me on. I'm always pleased to meet another Crystal in SEO and another honorary Crystal in SEO, B.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Indeed. So yeah, thank you for allowing me to jump on your podcast.
We're stoked.
So I have to explain how our paths even cross because we both have podcasts, and I'll let you tell a little bit about your podcast in just a second, but we ended up on a roundup list of best SEO podcasts that a person put on LinkedIn, and we were flattered and just so surprised. And then I saw Crystal's name on there and I was like, oh, she looks really nice. I'm going to reach out and message her. And so I did. And you responded and you've just been so gracious. So do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do in your job and about your podcast, all those things?
Yeah. So my name is Crystal Carter. I'm the head of SEO Communications at Wix. I say that a lot. And I am also the co-host of the SERPS Up SEO podcast on Wix. And we talk about SEO and SEO trends and SEO deep thoughts and lots of things that are happening around search and things like that. And yes, I work in SEO for Wix. So I do a couple of things there. Really, it's a company that really admires and it really enjoys people exploring different things and getting involved in lots of different ways, which is something I love about working with the team. And so I get to work with our product team who are developing new products for Wix, new SEO products all the time and adding to our SEO stack. And I get to help celebrate the amazing things that they do all the time. I also get to speak to Wix users. So we have our webinars and people will say, what does that mean? And what is this? And how do I do that? And we answer those questions and talk to folks there. I also get to spend a lot of time talking to SEOs who may not be familiar with Wix and the SEO capabilities that we have. And that's something that I really enjoy as well, because people say, oh, can you do that? I'm like, yeah, you can do it like this and like this. As a matter of fact, I did it yesterday. So that's a lot of fun. And I also get to do a lot of going around the place, talking about Wix at conferences and talking about SEO generally at conferences and on podcasts like this and on webinars and in articles and all sorts of fun things. I enjoy my work. It's a good time.
You can tell. And it's really fun to meet other people who love SEO and who can break it down and make it simple. So I'm so excited to dive in. And my favorite question to ask anyone who joins us is this. How do you define SEO, especially since you're going around talking to people? What do you say when someone is like, what is SEO?
To me, SEO is bending the internet to your will. Basically, you set about with a hypothesis of what you want to happen with your website or with your rankings or with a piece of content somewhere. And you say, I want people who search for this to arrive at my website here, or to go to this piece of content there, or that sort of thing. And if you're able to do that's SEO.
Yeah, we're drooling over here over this because there's no right or wrong answer, but that might be my favorite.
You said people have a hypothesis. And I love that so much because I think a lot of times when people talk about SEO or anything SEO related and content and all that type of stuff, they want this like absolutely proven path that this is exactly what you have to do. And these are the exact results you're going to get. I struggle because I'm like, look, I can't promise you that. Like this is essentially a scientific method. We're going to test it, see if it works. And then if it doesn't, we're going to do something else. We're going to make strategic decisions here. It's not just let's put a word out there and see what happens. I love that you said hypothesis.
I was just going to say that reminds me like when I was starting out, that for me, that was a huge hiccup to get over for charging for my services, because it's like, we're testing this hypothesis together. Yet I'm guiding you. I'm using my knowledge. I'm bringing my expertise. So it was a little bit of a road bump to get over for me with that.
And I would say that like when I say hypothesis, I don't just mean out of nowhere. Like it's not based on nothing. You're going to look at your search volume and you're going to say, okay, there's this search volume for this keyword. These people are ranking for that. For these people are the people who are ranking for it. I've looked at the SERP and I can tell that they haven't updated that content in 4 years. I also know that we as an entity, we as a blog, as an entity, if you think of your blog or your website as an entity, I also know that we as an entity, we rank for a lot of keywords in that area, in that sort of that ballpark. So that means that we will have a high likelihood that Google already understands that we're generally in that neighborhood. If we put out a piece of content for this based on all of the data that I've seen, based on all of the analysis that I've done, based on all of the experience that I have, based on how we're optimizing it, based on SERP features, based on a bunch of other things. I'm looking at this, and this isn't a hypothesis that I've pulled out of thin air. This is an intentional act that you expect to see some kind of return on it. And when you're testing, you're going to test it, you're going to put it out. And it's different from, I think, people who come from a traditional marketing background will think about it as if it's like you're just printing a leaflet or you're printing a book or you're printing a brochure or something like that. That's not how SEO works. If you publish a piece of content and you see it on the SERP and that it's hovering around 20, let's say it's hovering around the 20 keywords or whatever, it's indexed, great. It's hovering around the sort of 20 ranking mark. And you're like, you know what? I've looked at this and there's actually this and this. And if we add that to it, then it'll bump it up. And these are things that you do because it's not just that it just sits there and then you never touch it again. The beauty of SEO is that you can go back and you can refine and you can use data that you're getting for how people are searching for it now, how people are responding to it now, and how you can pivot it and bend them to your will to get the outcome that works best for your business.
Absolutely. That is so great. I appreciate that. And I appreciate you breaking that down, like just providing the roadmap to the hypothesis and doing the research first is so important. And I think, and this is a good lead in because Wix is a website builder, correct? That's a primary function or whatever. I think a lot of times people think, oh, I'm going to use this website builder, and they may not understand exactly what SEO is, but they expect the SEO to come with the website builder. So how do you respond and help those people who are like, oh, this isn't already done for me?
So in Wix, we have a general ethos where we expect everyone to have a basic baseline of SEO starting points. I've worked on self-built websites as an SEO consultant, and sometimes they have no sitemap. Oh, it doesn't exist. Like regularly speaking, I worked on places where they don't have menus in place on all the pages. They don't have a bunch of things in place. So on Wix, for instance, every website has a sitemap, has a dynamically generated, dynamically updating sitemap. And it's really easy to manage certain tags, and it's really easy to have certain things. Additionally, we build in structured data for a lot of our pages. So for instance, if you make an event page, it will come with event structured data. If you make a blog, it will have blog structured data built in. If you make a product page, it will have product page structured data built in. And that means that you're allowed to start from a certain point without having to do too much of that or too much technical SEO to get off the ground. The other thing I would say is that we also allow you to customize those things. So like, I'm a big structured data nerd. I love structured data. You can get in and you can fine tune the structured data on each individual page. You can also set it back to the default if you break it. And the default will always work, but you can always, and the default will always work, but you can customize it as well. We also have in the CMS, we have a guide. We have a setup checklist. So if you're completely new and if you want some SEO that's built into your CMS, we have that available. So there is a sort of make sure you have your title tag on your homepage, make sure you have this and make sure you have that so that you can get going. However, we have a lot of tools built in that allow somebody who is professional, and if you get a professional to come in to fine tune those things. And I think also what a professional brings, whether it's an agency or a consultant, is that intentionality, is that being able to pivot and being able to position a particular content for a particular audience, which is something that a lot of business owners struggles to do. A lot of business owners are like, yeah, I just like fix refrigerators. I don't know. They just write their blog about, or they just publish their website and it says, oh, hi, this is me and I do this and we are smart and we do great things. I'm like, say your name, say your business name, say your name. Stop saying we. Stop it.
Oh my God.
I just got to do a hand clap for that one. Thank you.
I can't remember who it was, but they were talking about a lawyer's website that they were helping. And it was it you?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, I'm like, I'm having this conversation. I can't remember who said it, but yeah, you were like, you're a lawyer. Put the word lawyer on your website.
And it might seem redundant to you, but like the internet, that like the bots don't know. They're like, you just say, we do great things. It's like, we are lawyers who do great things. We are attorneys that do stuff. Like, think about how, if you think about yourself in the third person, think about your website a bit in the third person. Like, how would you describe yourself to someone else? And make sure that you have, sometimes there's a saying in England, which is it does what it says on the tin. And make sure that your website does what it says on the tin. I think sometimes it's something with meta descriptions a lot where people try to be like really creative with the meta description. Nah, sum it up. It's like you got 100, right? You have 155 characters. Sum it up. What is the key point? What is this about? Like, this is a blog about refrigerator repair. Boom. You don't want to wax poetical about, oh, once upon a time I saw a refrigerator. Nope. Like, just lay it out, say exactly what it is. Because I think with AI and stuff, everything's super, super clever and there's lots of different things. But one of the things we're finding, one of the things that's really apparent when people look at ChatGPT, and I know they keep adding more features. So by the time I say this or by the time this goes out, the bots have probably completely taken over and stuff. But I who knows? I could be a bot myself. Anyway. But one of the things that's apparent is like when you talk to ChatGPT, I remember I was like, can you make this piece of text into 150 characters? And they're like, yes, here you are. And it was 263 characters. And I was like, I was like, can you try it again? Make it shorter? They're like, of course. And they made it longer. And I was like, yo, this is not what I asked you for. So I think, remember that like the bots are very smart, but they're also dumb. Like they're not understanding it in the same way. So you have to give them clues. You have to give them the appropriate tools. And these are the things that you learn through practice in SEO. So as an SEO, you are intentionally focusing your attention to make it so that users can find what they need using search engines. And you have to learn how search engines understand websites in order to do that.
I feel like clarity is so underrated. And everything you just said was like, please be clear. Just please be clear. Clear. You can get cutesy further down the page, but please, for the love of everything, be clear.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
So you've said a couple of things that I just want to clarify, because a lot of people listen to our show and they're similar to us. They're like solopreneurs and they're maybe probably being introduced to SEO or just building on their basic knowledge of SEO. So I just wanted to clarify a couple of things. Can you tell us why a sitemap is important? Because it's one of those things that I take for granted, because you also mentioned the acronym CMS, which is Content Management System. And a content management system is like a Wix or any sort of website builder that manages all your content and you put all your text and pictures and products and all that stuff in. But I thought, let's talk about the sitemap situation.
Yes. Okay. So a sitemap is a tool. A sitemap is a tool that helps a web crawler to understand your website. The way I describe it is if you were in a restaurant, and let's say you had a restaurant and Google shows up for lunch, right? And they sit down and they ask you, what do you serve? And if you don't have a sitemap, you're essentially saying to them, have a look, like look around. And you're essentially asking them to look around at the other tables and see what other people have ordered, which is basically like what people, from a website point of view, that's like things that people have been shared on social media or things that have had links to them or things that have had that sort of thing. So you're essentially depending on other people's links and other people's stuff to get that content visible. Or you could just give them a menu. So essentially they sit down and it might be that you have this fantastic chicken salad that nobody at the moment has, right? That nobody at the moment has seen. But if you put it on your menu, then they can see, oh, there's a chicken salad. I like chicken salad. Great. I know other people who like chicken salad. I can recommend it to them. So think about it that way, right? And what happens when you don't have a sitemap is it just makes it a lot harder. You can also use your sitemap to take an all killer, no filler approach to your SEO. And essentially for some CMSs, they generate a lot of extra pages or content. So sometimes they'll generate like extra pages for tags or extra pages for images or things like that. And if you leave that on your sitemap, then essentially what you have is like tons and tons of pages that mean nothing.
Yes.
And you can instead, you can use the sitemap to just point to the most important pages, like to your category pages, to your blog pages, to your main product pages, to those sorts of things. I'll tell you an very interesting sitemap actually is Beyonce's sitemap. Beyonce's website has millions of pages, millions and millions. Her sitemap has about 100, which is really interesting. And I've seen it before where I've taken somebody's sitemap that had thousands and thousands, and I pared it down to a couple of hundred. And it actually is really useful because if you go onto if you're going to get stuck into your SEO and you want to take it a little bit seriously, you should check out Google Search Console. It's totally free and it will tell you how Google's crawling your website. Also useful to remember, you can also, if you go to Bing Webmaster Tools, and you already have a Google Search Console account, you can do one click to connect your Google Search Console account to Bing Webmaster Tools. And you can also see how Bing is crawling your website, which is useful in the new era of new Bing and Bing actually being something of a thing. So go to Google Search Console and you can see information about which pages Google has in their index. And people ask me, what's the difference between being indexed and being ranking and all that sort of stuff? So what happens is first Google will crawl your website and they'll go look at all these pages, right? Okay, I can see all these pages. And then they'll say, okay, I want this one. That's essentially the index. Now, when it comes to ranking and indexing, it's a little bit like having a platinum album, which we've all done, obviously. So, for instance, if your album was going to go platinum, if you were going to have a hit album, getting played on the radio doesn't necessarily make you a hit record. But most of the time, I know TikTok's like a variable or whatever, but most of the time you can't get to be a hit record until you've been played on the radio. So being indexed is like essentially your song getting played on the radio. Whether or not you rank is whether or not it's like a hit record, whether people are like, yeah, we like this song. This is really good. So being indexed is like being in the game. And that's the first step to being able to rank. If you're not indexed, then you can't rank. But you have to get indexed first. And so you can see in Google Search Console which pages are indexed and which pages aren't. And if your pages aren't indexed, then there's things you can do to move that around. We have a great tool within the Wix CMS, content management system, in our SEO stack that allows you to see that from Google Search Console within within Wix. And you don't even have to go into Google Search Console to see it. And it's really useful because it can also impact which pages you think to optimize. So for instance, if you have, let's say you've got 20 pages on your website and 5 of them are indexed, what you want to do, if you want to get the other pages indexed, is you want to add internal links from the 5 pages that are indexed that are going to the 5 pages or to the other pages that aren't indexed. And I don't know if I've shared this on a podcast, but the way I think about it is, and I'm sorry, I feel like I'm veering off from what we talked about before.
No, great.
No.
Okay, so the way I think about it is nachos. Now, you've all had nachos before, yeah?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Okay, anyway, now there's a strategy with nachos. You have your nachos and you pour the cheese on the nachos, right? You go to 7-Eleven or whatever. You pour the cheese. Nachos, this is the best nacho cheese. Anyway, so what happens is lots of the cheese goes to the chips on top. These are your pages which are indexed. These are your pages which get search traffic. These are your pages which get a lot of visibility. Then you have chips which are underneath, right? When you're thinking about your internal linking, if anybody who's ever successfully eaten a bowl of nachos will tell you that you do not just eat the chip off the top with all the cheese. Mm-hmm. Do that. By the time you get to the end, you will have no cheese and a bunch of chips. Mm-hmm. Nobody likes that. Yep. So what you need to do when you think about your internal linking is essentially you take the chips that don't have cheese and you use the top chip as a reservoir. So you have the pages which are getting traffic and you link them to the pages which are not getting traffic. Because then when Google crawls your website and they are crawling this page that they already know and they already like and they're already ranking, they will go, oh, I didn't know about this page as well. And then they'll see that one and they'll get more signals. That page is also important. And it adds more goodness to your website, just like you're adding more cheese to your chips.
I love these analogies so much.
I was going to say, analogies are the best. This might be my favorite to all of it. Okay, so just really quick before, I know Bees probably wants to jump in here with a question, but you mentioned that like sometimes the tags can create new pages. And I'm actually working, like my thing is Shopify. So I'm working with a Shopify store owner right now where that very thing has happened. It's created a whole bunch of pages from these tags. And so I was wondering, is there like a universal way to get rid of that?
So in Wix, we automatically de-index tag pages. And depending on how your site is configured and how you're using your tags, you might want to do that as well. So that's an it depends answer.
Okay.
An absolute, like what I've seen when looking at websites is what you sometimes get is really sloppy tagging. Like really like messy, sloppy, nobody's paying attention to it tagging. So somebody makes a web page about shoes, right? And they tag it with shoe and shoes or capital shoe. And those are all essentially the same tag. You do not need 4 different tags for shoes if you have shoe, capital, shoe, lowercase, shoe, first letter, capital, first letter. You don't need that. So what's really useful is to go through your tags and just make sure you don't have any duplicates or any near duplicates in them. Sometimes if you have an apostrophe, if you have Billy's or something, if you have an apostrophe, then you'll end up with a space. So for instance, if it's, like birthdays or something like that. And let's say you have like an apostrophe, so birthday apostrophe S, then sometimes you'll end up with a space between your tags. Go through your tags and fill them out. And some CMSs that I've seen, they will create a whole feed based on the tags. And if that happens, then that also is doing something where, and I talked about indexing. One of the things about indexing is that Google only has so much time to figure out what's going on with your site, right? They'll arrive on your site and they'll go, cool, let's see the menu. And you're like, cool, there's the menu. I'm like, great. I'm like, okay, I'm going to crawl these pages. And they go through. If they are bumping into 404s, they're going to, ooh. If they bump into another one, they go, oh, what is that? And if they bump into like broken pictures, they're like, oh, yuck. And then let's say you're trying to go through your tags and they're like, this is the same tag. And so that's the same tag. So by the time they get through all the tags, they're like, oh, Lord, I'm tired. Never mind. And so it's essentially, this is crawl budget. Essentially, like you don't want to waste their time on tags that don't mean anything. So make sure that you have tags that actually matter and that you're tagging them for a reason. So if you don't expect that people will search for those tags, or if you don't expect that you might rank for those tags, then don't tag it up.
Yeah, that was going to be my follow-up. Is okay, what determines a good tag?
Well, so I think it's something that's actually, so a tag is like, it's an attribute essentially. So for instance, if you have, and it's also how you're using your tags. So if you have your tags, particularly for e-commerce or something like that, you're going to think about how the tags fit onto your navigation. So tags don't necessarily need to be indexed, but they might provide user value. Right. So it might be that you have a collection. Let's say you have a website about, I don't know, hats, right? And you have different tags for the different types of colors or something. Let's say you're tagging it under red, or you're tagging it under like the fabric, like it's like a felt hat or something like that. If you're actually showing those tags on the website and they're visible, then think about that. So those tags will be visible to users. So what would users expect to see? What would users expect to be able to click on? And then also I would say that you should think about how it fits into how the bots are going to read it. So the bots will see the tags as well. So if they're seeing tags that are relevant, then think about that. I see sometimes with blogs, people will tag blogs with all kinds of stuff. And the tags will help Google to form information about what your website is about and what your business is about. For instance, if you did a blog, let's say you were a hat seller, which I can't remember what the name. A milliner is the name of a hat maker. So if you were a milliner, I know someone who calls himself a millionaire, like a millionaire kind of thing. Anyway, so if you were a hat maker and you were writing a blog about hat making and you were talking about hats, then for instance, it might be that let's say you had a blog that was about a trip that you took to, I think I saw this actually in one case to like Mardi Gras or something, right? And you might have said, oh, I saw great hats at Mardi Gras. Somebody had this hat. Somebody had that hat. Oh, I talked to this person, et cetera, et cetera. You don't really need to tag it with Mardi Gras.
That is so helpful. Yes.
You don't really need to tag it with Mardi Gras because you're not going to make any more content about Mardi Gras because that was one time that you went to the thing. It might be that you tag it with travel or something. It might be that you tag it with inspiration or something. But if you're not going to do more stuff on that, you don't really need to tag it with that because it'll just clutter up your crawl. It might send confusing signals to Google.
So are tags like hashtags? Should we be using some similar ones? Does every post need to have different tags? That's where my brain is going.
I think it depends on, again, it will depend on how your site is configured. And I think it's worth looking at them as like one collection of information. So if you can do a crawl, there's a tool called Screaming Frog, which is free for under 500 URLs. And you can pull it out and you can see the tags. I think you might also be able to pull out all your tags, extract them, and depending on the CMS. And I think it's worth thinking about whether or not they're visible. If they're not visible and you're just using them to sort the information yourself in the back end, then you need to check if it's actually being shown on the page, because if it's not visible on the page, it might not actually be in the HTML of the page. And then I think also it's worth thinking about just making sure that they're relevant and that as a unit, as a whole, They tell a consistent story about your brand, your service offering, what you do, so that they're not just like a bunch of random tags without a bunch of random topics.
The way that this kind of sounds to me is kind of, we're talking about like content pillars of a website a lot. And it almost sounds like these tags should all kind of point to the same content pillar, and these tags should be in the same category, content pillar, that type of thing. Is that accurate? Or
I think I would say that I think what's important to think about is that like when Google, other search engines are crawling your website, it's important to remember that all of the meta tags, all of the links, all of the data on your website is used to tell Google who you are. So the more consistent that it is, and the more sort of in the same sort of realm that it is, then the clearer it will be to Google or whoever that you are who you say you are, you have expertise, you have authority, you have trust around that space. I was in our podcast recently, we were discussing head terms. And so I did a little bit of research on the head term hats, actually. And what was interesting is that normally for head terms, like Google's, no, you can't just search for hat. They're like, what kind of hat do you actually want? Are you talking fedoras? Are you talking like baseball hats? What are you talking? And so they'll give you like more and more bubbles, like trying to filter you to different spaces. But what was interesting is that like lids showed up top for hats. And one of the reasons why is because like they know that lids is hats. Lids, that's all they do. That is all they do for 20 years. Like they've just been selling hats. So if somebody's looking for hats, then probably lids will have something that satisfies what they need because that's all they sell. They only sell hats. So I think it's really important to be consistent in your brand messaging and in the kinds of terms, and think about your metadata, your tags, your links, your link attributes as part of that story. That's essentially part of the story for the bots. So the humans will see like all of the lovely blogs that you're writing and all of the images that you're sharing, and the bots can see the images as well in a slightly different way. But everything you're adding onto it, including your technical SEO type stuff, is all helping to tell that story. So it should all be in the sort of the same neighborhood.
I love that. So one of the things that I talk about with SEO copywriting is we're writing for the humans, but remembering that the bots are there too. And I'm hearing you say a lot of things about like story and messaging and branding.
I'm always like this whenever we talk to somebody and they say something like Schema.org. It's, we have to do a podcast on that. So I'm like, I can't wait to go research that because I've been there. It's one of those things where I was like, I don't really know enough about this yet to talk about it, but the best way to learn about it is to do it. So
yeah, Schema.org is really fun. Like you go in the search thing and you can search up what you need. And you can search up and then you can figure out all of the stuff. I have an article about schema markup on the Moz blog. I cannot remember the name of the article, but if you look up my name and Moz and schema, you'll find it. And that talks about it a lot. It lays it out I think I lay it out pretty good. But you can also, what's useful is to also look at other people's schema. So if you go to validator.schema.org, you can pop in a URL and you can have a look at it. There's also the rich results gallery. If you go to the Wix SEO Learning Hub, it's like wix.com/SEO/learn. We have a great article on rich results as well, which talks about like the rich results gallery and how you can see the stuff that will get you additional visibility on Google. So if you ever see like the jobs, like Google for jobs, that jobs carousel or that jobs widget, that's powered by schema markup. If you see recipe cards, that's also schema markup as well.
Okay. So I want to pop back to what you said in the beginning, because you had mentioned your learning center or whatever for Wix.
Yeah.
So my first comment / question is like, how many of your users actually utilize those articles? And because I'm like, they're such a resource, no matter what content management system you use, they are such a resource. It seems so intimidating, but I remember you said that there was like a checklist to go through. So that I'm sure probably helps people. But then you also mentioned that you would talk to people who use your product. And then I was wondering, do you take that feedback back to the product designers? And how does that relationship work?
Yeah, so we're constantly having conversations with users. There are 200 million Wix users, over 200 million Wix users, and we love them all. And basically, we chat to people in lots of different spaces. And yeah, absolutely, we action feedback that we get and actively engage with users and have user interviews about different things that we can do. And certainly, we have an SEO board that talks to us and we say, we've got this new idea. What do you think? And they say, we think this and this. We've got some fantastic people on the board and they have great insights. And with regards to making sure that users are able to get the Wix SEO Learning Hub, we have a monthly webinar, which we regularly promote to Wix partners. we have an SEO dashboard within the CMS. And so any new content that's added to the SEO Learning Hub is also visible within the dashboard, Wix SEO dashboard. You can also see your Google Search Console rankings in the Google or in the SEO dashboard as well.
That's cool.
It is cool. I literally love it.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
So yeah, we like to make sure that we are able to, the team as a whole really likes to make sure that the people who are trying to do SEO on Wix feel fully supported and feel like they can achieve. You're able to stretch if you want to. You're also able to chillax if you want to as well. So we make sure that all the basics are covered. But if you're like, I really want to get into Schema, there's space for that as well. There's also something called Velo, which is it's like a developer space. And essentially you can write your own JavaScript. Fun fact, if you're not great with JavaScript, if you're like, I don't know how to do whatever, you can use, and I have done this, you can use ChatGPT to help you because it's it's Node.js. Essentially, I had a situation where I went to Velo examples and I found something that was similar, but not exactly what I wanted. And so you can extract the code, and I took the code and I popped it into ChatGPT and I was like, I want to change this code into something that does this. And ChatGPT was like, great, try this. And I was like, okay, thanks. So I popped that into Velo on the Wix website, and Velo has a lot of assistance on it. So if you have your syntax wrong, if you use the wrong comma, if you don't use curly braces, and if you don't do whatever, it'll say that's not valid. Or if you leave out a variable or something, it'll say that doesn't work. So it was like the error in your code, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, oh, okay. So I popped it back to ChatGPT. I was like, hey, Velo says that there's an error. And that's not it. And ChatGPT was like, oh, try this. And so I popped it back and forth. And between the two of them, like I ended up with something that worked really well, even though I'm not a JavaScript whiz. So that's really, really useful and really interesting. So yeah, there's a lot of really great opportunities to flex or chillax in Wix.
Yeah. Man, I love that. It's like the coolest thing because that's one of the best use case scenarios I've heard for ChatGPT.
Yeah.
And that was going to be my other question because you mentioned ChatGPT earlier. Have you integrated that with Wix, or do you guys encourage your users?
Yeah, she's dancing. She's dancing.
I am because I've showed it to a few SEOs and we're feeling it all out. Basically, like Wix has been in the AI space for a while. We have something called ADI, which is artificial design intelligence or something, essentially where we would put in a certain prompts and then we'd spin up a sort of first draft of a website. That was one thing that we've had going for a few years. Recently, we have added into the editor, which allows you to edit the sort of main pages of your website in our sort of WYSIWYG builder. We have a section that says create AI text. And what you do is, let's say you've got your about page, and I know a lot of people are like, I don't want to write my biography. It makes me want to like crawl into a hole and hide. I know
Job security.
So I know some people really don't like that. But what you can do is you can say, you say create AI content, and then there's a couple of boxes, and you can say this is for. It says, oh, it's a product. What does it need to include? And you can say t-shirt, size 5, blue, cotton. And then you click the button and it'll whiz around, and it's ChatGPT backed or ChatGPT powered. And then it'll put out 3 different versions of the text, and it'll be like, oh, this t-shirt is amazing, or this t-shirt is great, or this t-shirt is fine, or whatever. And you can go, I would like select number 3. And then you can say use, and it'll pop it into the space, and it spits out about a paragraph or so. And it's always worth to, my dear listeners, to check and to edit and to assess the AI content that you use, because the bots are clever, but they are also dumb. It's essentially right. It's essentially like a really sophisticated version of predictive text. It's essentially what it is. It's trained on millions and millions and millions, and so that's great, but it doesn't actually understand in the same way that a person would. So just double check, make sure you're happy, and put a little sauce on it if you can.
Okay. So the last question related to AI is there's been lots of chatter about, okay, if you use AI, is Google then going to penalize you because it was generated by AI?
I think this is the other reason why you need to make sure that you're adding it in yourself, and that you're making sure that you're editing it yourself, and making sure that you're putting it in your own tone of voice and things like that. Also, so that it has some unique positioning. I think one of the things that people are going like, SEO is dead, which is the thing that happens every few years. People go, is SEO dead? What's going on? Like, it happens every few years. And to be honest, I think that in the age of AI, I think SEO is going to be almost more important than ever, because there's going to be a lot of very samey content coming out. So how do you differentiate in that space? And I think that SEOs are going to need to manage that well. And I think that the AI content is useful, but I think it should be useful as a tool. It is a tool, and I don't think it's the final thing. I think it is a tool. So use it as a tool. The other day I had a list of something, and I was like, can you add or can you remove all of everything after this / on this list of URLs? And it just did it. And I was like, yes, thank you. Or can you turn this list into a CSV for blah, blah, blah? And they were like, yeah, great. Like that's really useful. So yeah, it's a tool. Or also sometimes if you find yourself, I found it before where I was searching for something that like I just couldn't articulate in a couple of words. And so I had a combo with ChatGPT and I was like, what is this? But what? And I just kept it going until it gave me something that was a hint and that I could then actually research that more detail on search.
I was just wondering, I'm like, I wonder if it could generate the schema markup.
I've tried this. And one of the problems with AI is AI hallucinations, because as I said, it's a very sophisticated version of predictive text. And so large language models, essentially, they predict the next word based on all of the words that they've read, which are millions. So I found what you could potentially use it for is to create a framework for schema if you were rolling it out across multiple URLs, for instance. So let's say you had 75 pages that had videos on them and you needed video schema for them, for instance. It might be that you used it to help you make the framework for your video schema. But what I found when I used this, because I tried to do exactly this, what I found was that it like made up a bunch of URLs. Because for a video schema, for instance, you're supposed to add in the URL for the image, for the thumbnail, for the video. And it was like, yeah, this is the URL. I was like, that URL doesn't, you just made that up. And so then I was like, what else did you make up? And then I had to go all the way back through like all of the things. So for one thing, like it's going to take you just as long to check it, to QA it, as it would for if you just wrote it yourself. However, if you were planning to do loads of things and you were like, I'd like this to include this attribute and that attribute, it could potentially format something that you could then use. You could then plug in variables to and that sort of thing. So I think that just make sure that you check everything, particularly anything technical. Because I had someone and they were like, oh yeah, I asked it to spin up code for a web application and it just did it. I was like, did you check it? And he was like, no. So how do you know if it works? It's if someone was like, oh, can you build me a house? I'm like, yeah, I can. Oh, I asked this lady and she said she could build me a house. I can't build a house. You have to check these things. Like you have to check it.
Yeah, we can be a little too trusting with some of these things. So I think that's a good reminder because it can be a helpful tool. Just check your work.
Yeah, check it. Check it before you publish it. Don't just publish
check it before you check yourself before you write yourself online.
Indeed, to quote Ice Cube. Great Ice Cube.
Great.
Okay, so before we leave, because I know we're going to wrap up here in just a second, what do you see as like the top 3 trends in SEO, or maybe the top 3 things to focus on if you're a small business owner wanting to maximize SEO for your business?
If you're a small business owner, I think that it's worth thinking about multimedia. And when I say that, I mean like videos, images. If you can do podcasty kind of things, like that's great as well. But don't just think about your content, particularly on your website, as just text. Make sure that you're thinking about other things as well. So make sure you're thinking about images as well. Google can use image recognition to understand the images on your pages in a different way. The second thing I would say is pay attention to AI in your space. Everyone is talking about AI. It's affecting us in lots of different ways. Pay attention to it. I hesitate to give specific recommendations around it because there's so much, it's changing so rapidly. But one of the things I would say is that Bing is becoming a player. And one of the things that people don't realize is that new Bing, which is seeing 15% uptick, and they're seeing growth while Google is seeing some decline. And it's a little bit of decline, but it's some decline. So they're seeing improvements. And what I'm seeing is that like people think that that when they go on Bing and they use the AI, because they're on Google, that they'll rank the same. And what happens on new Bing is that you ask it a question and it will give you an answer with links to websites. All of those links come from Bing's index. Bing's index is different from Google. Everyone's been paying attention to Google for years and years. Nobody's been paying attention to Bing. So if you are a business and you're not on Bing Webmaster Tools, do it. If you're a business and you're not on Bing Places, do it. If you're not paying attention to where you're ranking on Bing, you should probably do that because it's going to be a little bit of low-hanging fruit. A lot of people are seeing more conversions there. Yeah. And a lot of people are starting to use Edge because they have to in order to get the new ChatGPT powered search. And then finally, I would just say it's worth making sure that you have your brand in a few different places. So not just on your website, but also that you're connecting the dots across all of your digital spaces. This is something I've spoken about in a few places, and it's something that I think is really important, is making sure that you're spreading yourself around in different places because it can help with indexing on your website. It can help with your overall digital footprint, and it can help with your SEO.
This is going to be my bi-weekly plug. Sign up for Haro. Oh, this is amazing. Thank you so much for being here. I feel like I have 4 tasks that I need to add to my Friday. This is absolutely incredible. Okay, where can people connect with you? And I know you mentioned you have a checklist or something, so let us know, where can people connect with you?
Okay, so I am on Twitter way too much, and my Twitter handle is Crystal on the Web. And if you go there, you'll find information about me. You will also see lots and lots of information from the Wix SEO Learning Hub. I also have a podcast on the Wix SEO Learning Hub, which is called SERPS Up. And I also publish on the Wix SEO Learning Hub. I publish a lot of content there. So do check me out there. And I'm on LinkedIn as well. Very rarely, but yeah, I am.
It clearly paid off because I think that's where you two met. So yay, LinkedIn. This is awesome.
I'm about to pop over to Twitter though. So Crystal's going to be like, oh my gosh.
Come through, tag me up.
Yeah, Crystal's going to be like, oh my gosh, this Crystal is following me everywhere on the internet.
Fine. I'll introduce you to the other SEO Crystals. Shout out Crystal Tang. Shout out Crystal O'Dane. Shout out Crystal Horson. Shout out Crystal Ortiz.
Awesome. Thank you, Dad. I know you're listening right now, but thanks for naming me Crystal. And on that note, I think we're done here. So thanks for listening. Crystal, thanks for being here. And we will catch y'all next time.
Bye.
Thanks for joining us today.
If you like this info, subscribe before you go so you never miss out on something related to SEO.
See you next time.